Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update. Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Namaste, konnichiwa. Welcome to the Nupur Tiwari Show. Let's talk business. But today we are not welcoming any guest. Rather, we'll be talking about what we have done because today is our 20th episode and it's so quick, right? So this is our journey we are going to talk about. I have been living in Japan from last 18 years, and in this 18 years what I experienced that big companies, they're having businesses in India, but the small companies, those who are really, they have their product and who are really interested doing business with India, they are having a lot of problems. And why these problems are occurring, we all know, but we are not looking for the solution. So here, let's talk business comes with the all cooperation and help from Indian Embassy and our Honorable Ambassador from India to Japan, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma's help and his all cooperation. We started this show called Let's Talk Business, and he was our first guest. So let's hear what he said.
Nupur Tiwari Show, Let's Talk Business, presented by Heal Tokyo and Heal India. We'll be talking only business. We'll be promoting your product, we'll be enlightened by our experts, and we'll be telling your startup stories as well. This is our first episode. We are starting our first episode with none other than His Excellency Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma. Definitely, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma is our Honorable Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma. With business applause, let's welcome him.
Thank you, Nupuji, for this lovely initiative, and I'm sure that both Indian and Japanese business people will be able to understand the facilitation which they can get from various agencies, including the Indian Embassy in Japan.
We are very excited to know how we can make business relation between India and Japan smoother, how Indian can do trade in Japan more.
The first thing is extremely important, and that is that if there is an Indian trader, how does he do trade in Japan? Or how does she do trade with Japan? Now, in order to understand that, the first thing is to understand the Japanese market. So first thing to consider is whether there is a market in Japan for the kind of products that you want to trade in, particularly exports from India in this particular case. And once you are convinced that yes, there is a market in Japan to launch the trade for the import of that item into Japan. So there are two kinds of standards in Japan. One is known as GIS, Agricultural Standards, GIS. And both of these are well publicized standards on various websites. One would need to obtain the certification for that. So if you're exporting from India, you can take the help of India-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and that provides for issuance of certification of the product by some of the Indian agencies. You can look at that list of agencies, and then you can utilize their facilitation for your products to come to Japan. When you are exporting to Japan, please remember that your first interaction with Japan or Japanese business ecosystem, that the predictability and trust, these are the two most important factors for any Japanese to do business with a foreigner or a foreign country. Both these things will be applicable to you as well. So when you try to export it, try to understand the Japanese business culture on logistics, on timeliness, on product is important. Second point is what if you want to import from Japan? Now that's another factor, which is again straightforward. Once you have already got interested in a particular product from Japan, you can start looking at it from the point of view of Indian standards requirements, whether the product will fit into the Indian standards requirement, whether it is an agricultural product or industrial product or machinery or capital product, anything of that kind. And if it fits in, whether it fits into the SEPA, which is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between India and Japan, and they're largely on a product which is imported from Japan, or there is a product in the Indian market which needs processing before it is finalized and sold in the Indian market or a market outside India. So in both the cases, you will need to understand once again the Japanese culture, the Japanese way of doing business, in order to make you more suitable for those Japanese companies.
Thank you so much for your wonderful answer. And the same way, we'd like to know that reverse Japanese businessmen, especially a bit smaller scale, they want to sell their product or want to have their own business in India, how they can be benefited, how they can start.
Now, let me take this question in the reverse direction. So, if there is a Japanese businessman who wants to export to India, how should he go about it? Now, in your case, first of all, you'll have to see if there is a market which exists for your kind of product. Now, when I say market, it is not only the requirement of the units, but it is also the cost effectiveness of your product in the Indian market. Indian market is highly cost sensitive, and therefore your pricing has to be right. India is a huge market with 1.4 billion population, and therefore when a Japanese businessman approaches Indian market, our general advice is that you look at a small segment of the market rather than looking at India as entire India as one market. That will help you, because if you want to reach out to entire India in the first go, it will be extremely difficult for you to initiate that. But if you are looking at a small portion of population, say about 10 to 12 million of people in a particular area in India, it will become more comfortable for you. It will become easier for you, because if you are choosing one geographical region, then culturally that will be homogeneous, linguistically that will be homogeneous, and therefore doing business with that particular geographical region or area will be much easier. If you are importing from India, once again, what I told about exporting from India remains valid for you. From India, once again, you can utilize the same channel as I told to the Indian businessmen to utilize. But most important point for the Japanese business people is that India and Japan are two different cultures, and therefore you should be able to appreciate the culture you are getting immersed in. It's very difficult business plans on the basis of differences in cultural practices, both social cultural practices as well as business cultural practices. So business cultures are different things, different kinds in two countries.
And definitely we all like to know how embassy can help on this.
So once that is done, how does embassy play a role in this? When I say embassy, I'm talking about the Indian embassy in Tokyo. The Japanese embassy in New Delhi can say its own facilitation role. So first thing to understand is that JETRO, which is Japan's leading external trade organization, has got multiple offices in India. And the Indian businessman who desires to import, export from Japan, or you can approach in order to understand again the business culture. Once you have contacted JETRO, I'm sure JETRO will come back with their own advice to you as to how to go about it. On the investment front, and again the business culture. Once you have contacted JETRO, I'm sure JETRO will come back with their own advice to you as to how to go about it. On the investment front, there are various other organizations and Japanese and Indian banks in each setting up of an office, So the embassy, you can find all the relevant email addresses and telephone numbers on our website. So you can search for Embassy of India in Tokyo. You can go on the website and look at various email addresses and the telephone numbers given therein, including for the economic and commercial work. You can send in your initial query. Mind you, the embassy will always remain as the initial interface, and it can do a bit of hand-holding, but later on the hand-holding will have to be done by your partner in India, or for Indian businessmen, your partner in Japan. For those who are looking at investing in India, Invest India is a good frontier, but again, embassy will be able to advise you when you send in your queries to the Embassy of India in Tokyo. And then we try to provide you with if you are looking for a list of companies you should contact in India, we should be able to provide you a list of suggested companies who have shown their interest in doing trade with Japan, and therefore you should be able to contact them, and it will be possible to go ahead because they have already shown their interest in Japan. The language of business communication with the Indian companies would remain English, and therefore it will be useful if the communications are made in English to the Indian business people. And for the Indian business people, of course, the English will be the language of communication. But those Indian businesses who would know and understand Japanese, it may serve them well to send the communication using Japanese language. So Indian Embassy will be able to provide you advice, will be able to provide you suggestions on the likely business partners in India, and for the Indian businessmen, the likely Indian partners in Japan, which can also be done through JETRO, which can also be done, I'm sure, through the Embassy of Japan in New Delhi. And thereafter, if you have any cultural issues to talk about, cultural here I mean business culture related issues, or if you're not getting a response, or you have landed yourself in a situation which you feel it's very difficult to come out from, we'll be able to advise you and do a bit of hand-holding for you to facilitate further in your endeavor to do business with India. So largely I'll say these issues would be important when you are considering to do business with India, which is a different culture altogether, both social and business. Try to understand the business culture. You can find many articles in various trustworthy websites and newspapers and magazines and books. Try to understand that, and as Embassy of India in Tokyo, we are always there to help you out in that. We also have a Consulate General in Osaka who would do the similar facilitation for you to understand the Indian regulatory framework, for you to contact the possible Indian business partners, for you to finally do trade or investment with India. Ms. Nupur Tiwari has started this program with a very clear objective in mind, and I sincerely hope that she succeeds in this, which is to bridge the communication gap. At the moment, the information available are very sketchy, and there are not many private sector players who are able to give you appropriate information and do the complete hand-holding for you. But we at the Embassy are committed to this, and we shall try to assist you as much as we can in reaching out your endeavor. There would be sectoral episodes of this program also coming in the future that will allow you to pick and choose your own sector of business and then understand various aspects of regulation or standards or certification, the areas of India which are more appropriate for that kind of product, the government procurement, the digital India, the startup India, the skill India. So there are many things which could be discussed in those episodes. But at the moment, I would wish Ms. Nupur Tiwari all the best for taking this initiative, and I hope that all of you are benefited through this initiative. Thank you very much. Arigato gozaimasu. Namaskar and dhanyavad.
And now I am going to tell you who all came as guests on this show after our honorable ambassador. So here you go. So our second guest was Mr. Rakesh Kochar. He is Senior Vice President, Treasury and Sales Finance with Nissan Motor. And he talked about how we can fill this gap between India and Japan with his vast experience working with Japanese company. And our next guest was Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, Senior Managing Executive Officer, Shinsei Bank, Advisor to President and CEO in Japan. And he also talked about how we can make bridge, how we can solve these problems between India and Japan. So Japan can have more Indian product and India can have lot of Japanese investment and product as well. And our next guest was Mr. Sachin Chaudhary. He is an angel investor, former board member of listed company Change, author of World Class Leadership. And he talked about never give up, because where he started and where he is today, it's a reality. And he talked his journey. He talked about how to be a successful businessman and entrepreneur as well. And here we go with our next guest. Our next guest was Mr. Rajan Sahgal. He is the Chairman Skill and Education of Thai, President India Golf Tourism Association, Chairman Tourism Committee of PHDCCI. And he talked about that how we can have more tourists between these two great countries. And after COVID, how we can move. And here you go with our next guest. Our next guest was Mr. Yusuke Yanagase. He is an expert automobile industry and it was our episode number 6. And he talked about how different these two countries working culture and ethics. Have you watched this episode? If you haven't, please do watch these episodes. I'm talking about episode number 6. And here you go with our episode number 7. Our episode number 7 was with Mr. Anil Chikara. And Mr. Chikara is founder CEO, Blue Bolt Startup Factory, founder chairman, Startup India Foundation. And he talked about how we can make this bridge broader and stronger with our Jugaad and Japanese productivity as well. So now we are going to episode number 8. And our next episode is with Mr. Sanjeev Sinha. And Mr. Sanjeev Sinha is very well known between India and Japanese business. And he is working on artificial intelligence these days. And he talked about how we can bring more Indian in Japan and we can recruit more Indian and we can make more stronger economic relationship between India and Japan. And here you go with our episode number 9. Our episode number 9 was a little bit different. We thought, why not talking about scholarships? And here you go, our expert, he is a professor of Keio University, Professor Rajiv Shaw. And he talked about all the scholarships Japan is offering which we Indian, especially Indian students, not aware of. So he just talked about all the listed scholarships, so more and more students, Indian students can come to Japan. So, and the next also we have another expert and he is Naveen Pathak, Mr. Naveen Pathak. And he is from USA and he is COO Entry India LLC. And he talked about how these 3 countries, US, Japan and India, can collaborate and make the business more stronger. Here you go, our next guest. Our next guest is Dr. Shreyas Varule. And he is PhD in Urban Engineering, Architect, Urban Planner. And he talked about definitely how a student's life can be in Japan. So that is such a great experience, great eye opener it can be for anyone who are willing to, who are looking forward to become a student here in Japan. And here you go with our episode number 12. And this episode we had our guest Mr. Raj Pathak. He's startup mentor and author. And he talked about how India can offer more facilities or more help to Japanese businessmen with the consultancy service. And our next guest is Mr. Paul Dupe, and he is MD and CEO of Randstand India. And he talked about his book, he talked about how he became where he is now from the park bench, and it was very inspiring story. If you haven't watched, I highly recommend you to watch this episode. Not only this one, all the episodes for having the business knowledge between India and Japan. And the next episode we had Dr. Mahul Brahma, and he is an author, TEDx speaker, communication leader, columnist, luxury commentator, and his books, 3 books, are on luxury, and this is very rare thing. So he talked about mythic value of luxury. And the next episode we are going with Mr. Ashok Kamal. He is a startup mentor, career and MSME counselor, knowledge giver, receiver, open-minded, lifelong learner, zeal and zest for life, spiritual engineer. Wow. And I recommend you all to watch this, how to survive in business when you need spirituality. So the topic was spirituality in business. We really need spirituality in business. So here you go with our next episode. Our next episode is episode number 16, and we had our guest Mr. Deepak Mali. He is the CEO of ABC Group, and he is going to do business with Japan one more time. His story is so inspiring. He has been doing business with Japan though, but now he is starting few more services. So I would like to request you all to watch this episode as well. And the next we had with Mr. Prasenjit K. Basu. He's very renowned economist, author and historian, and he talked about Japanese economic model for India. And again, if you haven't watched this, please do watch. And our 18th episode was with Tomio Isogai-san. He's ex-MD of SERP India, freelance advisor of India-Japan relationship. And he definitely gave all the knowledge that what is the difference between India, Japan, and we have both countries. We have strong points which we have to emphasize. So he talked about all these things. And last week we had a product, our guest, and that product's name is All One. It is a wonderful product, and it is going to have business from now in India. So everyone, with the goal and aim, we started Let's Talk Business. We are slowly reaching there. This is our 20th episode. So from next week, we will be again starting new episode with your love and blessing. So with the goal, with the cooperation of Indian Embassy, with the all help of our Honorable Ambassador from India to Japan, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, we started this journey, and today we are with 20th episode. Such a great big milestone. So from next week, we'll become more stronger and bigger, and we will definitely fill this gap. So everyone who ever want to do business with India can have the chance and the Indian who really want to do business in Japan, they can have all the information. So everyone, I talked about all the 19th episode. If you haven't watched any of the episode, I suggest you please go to our YouTube channel, that is Yogannanupur, and please watch all the episode of Let's Talk Business, because we need business to have good economy. And Japan and India, we are not only culturally, we are business wise, we are partners, and we are going to have more and more business from now. So everyone, that was for our 20th episode, and I feel so great that we are filling the gap. We are making the bridge with your all love and cooperation. So with this, I'd like to end today's episode. Everyone, Subratri, good night, West Minasai. Please take care.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.